Since digital cameras have existed, we have had two main types of lenses. One being manual focus cinema lenses and the other being photography electronical lenses. We are now seeing both those worlds merge. And here we have one of the very first AF electronical anamorphic lenses. I don't know about you, but that got me asking a few questions. Do we really need AF for anamorphic shooting? Will it ruin that cinematic look that anamorphic gives us? And is it really the game changer for solo shooting? So the first question I had anyways was, is this a cinema lens with added electronics inside it? Or is this a photography lens, what already contains the electronic element, with a cinema body built around it? And I think I've got to the bottom of this, because the second question I had for myself was, how does the AF even work? Is it similar to what Sony does with the native lenses? Is it something like a Sigma third-party lens? So I decided to run loads of tests and find out and get to the bottom of both of these questions. But before we get to those tests and find out that, let's first look at what this lens actually has to offer. So this is a 40mm prime lens with a wide open aperture of t1.8. It has an anamorphic squeeze factor of 1.33, so somewhere on the lighter side of anamorphic, and it weighs in at around 614 grams, which is actually quite heavy considering this is labelled as a super 35mm coverage lens, so not full frame. Yet most of the test footage I will show you today will be full frame. I just think Sirui have been really smart here about how they have chose to release the 40mm first, as we all know around that 40 to 50mm mark, super 35 lenses tend to often cover full frame lenses anyways. The lens is a full aluminium construction and is way better built than you're probably expecting for its price point and how it kind of looks off images. It actually feels like it's got a bit of weight to it and feels quite sturdy. It has kind of pitch gears just like you'd expect on a cinema lens and not on a photography lens. And the filter thread element on the front is 77mm, meaning we can get all those 82mm ND filters on with ease without coming into any of our footage. On the body of the lens there are two switches. One is AF MF to just engage the AF system, and the other one is to declick the aperture, which is great on a video lens and just what you'd expect. There is a third and final button, not a switch, and this is AF lock. I'm not sure if this is customizable in some of the other Sony cameras, but in my Burano and FX3 testing, I've not seen any option to customize it. So I think it's kind of stuck as this. It would be great if this is possible, but I'd presume that Sony maybe only allow this on their native lenses. I'm actually quite a big fan of the way this lens is designed. Seeing the 3D render photos, I thought I was going to dislike it, but when it actually arrived and I got to hold it, feel the weight of it, feel that it's aluminium, and it's kind of got this matte finish paint on it, so when light hits it, it's quite neat looking. And even the lettering and the millimeters, it's kind of like spaced out and just well designed with like a minimal fashion. Just looks really modern, I guess. It's really well done. Something they have not done though is wrote the kind of focus markings like you would get on a cinema lens around the body. So I guess this pushes us back into the photography lens. It's similar. Even some photography lenses have this wrote on the body, but this lens does not. It is definitely something that we would get on a cinema lens, so I would say this leans it back into being a photography lens. It's kind of a push and pull start here. Mounts are interesting, as you have probably guessed here, because this features electronics inside the lens itself. Once you pick your mount, you are stuck, so no kind of interchangeable mounts or adapting this lens here. You have the option of E mount, X mount, Z mount, and MFT. No RF or L mount, which is quite disappointing, but I guess that comes down to licensing. I would absolutely love to see an L mount version of this, given all those amazing Lumix cameras with open gate and that new amazing AF system. That would be an absolute dream made in heaven, in my opinion. And finally, it comes with two flare options. You have like a natural silver and then a blue variant for those classic anamorphic lens flares. The one I got sent to review is the blue option, so just keep that in mind when you're watching all the sample footage in a sec, that they are all taken with the blue option kind of selected on this lens. It's worth noting that although this is a 40mm, for those who don't know, when it comes to anamorphic, they capture more horizontally than they do vertically. So they actually list it as a 40mm top to bottom, which it is, but kind of horizontally, as in the width of the shot, it's more equivalent to a 30mm, and it does feel in use much wider than, say, a 40mm spherical lens would. Right, so I've made this timeline here in DaVinci Resolve with all the test footage I've been capturing. I'm going to get into some real world examples just after this and how I found it, kind of the usability of it and what kind of images we can expect. But first, let's just dive into how this performs if we pixel peep. This is full frame Sony Brano 8.6K T1.8 wide open. As you can see, it does capture, but we have some serious vignetting going off on the. This is outdoors, so I'm not using a light or anything here. This is just lit by sun and daytime, so these vignettes are all from the lens, but it does cover the full frame, as I mentioned. If we step down from T1.8 to T2.8, it gets better. If I just jump back and forth between those, you can see it gets better. Still don't fix it though. So here we are now at Super 35, and you can see all that vignetting's gone, the darker edges. We're wide open at T 1.8. This is at 5.8K, as that's the Super 35 mode in the Brano. It drops in to avoid like pixel binning and stuff. T2.8, T1.8. You can see it cleans up a little bit. Let's check edge sharpness. If we just punch in maybe 800%, you can see really sharp in the middle. I would say detail, not sharp. Right, I mean, I don't like my images to be too sharp. I'm not a massive fan of the sharpness of G-Master lenses. I think they're great, amazing lenses. It's just, for video, they're almost too sharp. They're definitely less sharp up in the corners. I would be more than happy with this kind of result from a lens. Like, a lot of the higher-end cinema glasses don't perform this good at all. And something else, I know it's only a 1.33 times D-squeeze, but the lack of distortion. Here on the full frame one, as it's got to cover more of a sensor, you're starting to get some pin cushion. If you try and fix it, you should never really fix lens distortion in an anamorphic lens. It's just part of the character. It starts to get a bit wavy. Again, I wouldn't normally fix this, fix anamorphic. I think it's part of the character. But you can see that's how much kind of distortion, which is low for anamorphic glass. It's almost a bad thing. I prefer more. Like I want my anamorphic lenses to feel anamorphic. I want it to kind of pin cushion distortion the edges and give it all that character. So if anything, I would say that I prefer way more distortion than this lens is giving off. Jumping across to the next test, and it's chromatic aberration. Keep in mind here that I got this quite late in the evening, and I'm at 2650 ISO. Jumped into the next range in the Brano, kind of pulled it down from there. So it's quite clean, it's just not like a sunny day. And we're looking for chromatic aberration. If we just punch in by 800%, you can see we have plenty of kind of pink. So running across this horizontal line, right across the screen, hopefully this shows up on YouTube, we've got some kind of pinky purple aberration, and then coming up with this vertical line, here we've got green teal. Teal's a good colour to have in your chromatic aberration. That's where the Arri signature primes go. People love those. This pink one here though, not as flattering. I prefer that to be a warmery colour. We're always going to get some sort of chromatic aberration. Just keep in mind this is 800%. For reference, we're talking about this branch right here, where cropped into this massively. Just a couple more examples here of chromatic aberration. This is a much busier shot, a lot more kind of shadows towards camera. Play the shot, then punch into 800%. And this one, I'm messing with the focus just to show you. There is kind of plenty of purple. There's more purple than green. And it looks really bad here at 800, but if again, for reference, this is that same shot where I'm messing with the focus. I can just about see it a little bit, but it's kind of hard without really zooming in and kind of pixel peeping on the footage. So we're now looking at the depth of field of the lens. This is wide open T1.8. And you can see the aperture blades wide open, which is not great. I think that is a bit of a downside. I actually like having the hectagon look in lenses. I see it in a lot of like UK dramas, high-end stuff, some Netflix stuff. But I'd rather be more in control of it. Like I'm putting it into the shot myself. You know, you're jumping onto 135mm and stepping it down to 5.6 so you can bring them in. Now this is wide open. And if you look at this red one here, I think it's really prominent that we've kind of not got a circle. We've got a hectagon, octagon. I don't know, no good with shapes. But yeah, it's definitely not perfectly round. Top left corner right here, they get a bit cat's eye, a bit oval. But I would like more. It's almost like one of the main downfalls for this lens for me is it's not anamorphic enough. If this was a 1.5 full frame, then yeah. But like, I just wish it was more anamorphic. And I get that it's the first of its type, so you don't want to go too far too early. And people may like this blend. It's definitely not bad at all. I just wish it gave us a little bit more of that character. And here we're stepping down to T2.8. And as you can see, we've now got nice overly round bokeh. That's as round as anamorphic gets. That kind of stretch ovalness comes with de-squeezing the footage, and it's very sought after. I just want kind of more. Like, I want more character. Here is an outdoor shot. Those cars are the left-hand side as they're driving into the shot. They're great. And here's where I step the lens down to kind of jump in between T2.8 and wide open, pulling it back in focus, just to give you an idea of how much depth you can get. But yeah, I think this gives us way more anamorphic than the like controlled test studio shots, but I still want more. You know, if I'm buying an anamorphic lens, I want it to feel really anamorphic. Focus breathing. So here I want to just test focus breathing. So I will lock in the camera, look at the edge, these picture frames on the left-hand side of the frame, just how much they're growing in and out of the shot. Look at this grid on the wall, how much that's shrinking and getting bigger. It's quite well controlled. Here's a real-world example. So I'm pulling focus to the barn at the left-hand side at the back, and then I'll pull focus back to this near side, right-hand side, and it's pulled. Really well controlled. For an anamorphic lens, that's probably A. There's very few anamorphic lenses that don't suffer bad from focus breathing. And now the big one when it comes to anamorphic lenses, it is flare. I'm probably the wrong person to judge anamorphic lens flares because I'm not a fan. I think they're a bit cheesy. I'm not the biggest fan. I don't fully hate them. I'd prefer them to be neutral than blue, but unfortunately I got the blue one in for review. It looks good though here, not too bad. This is on low power mode. This torch I have has like a low power and a brighter mode. In a sec, you'll see I'll jump across to the high power mode. And here's where we start getting all the orbs and the objects, and this is where I'm not a fan. Pause it there for us. You can see there's like greener, and there's like a downwards one. There's this big left green one over here. There's a blue one. There's loads of elements to this. But I can't complain because a minute ago I was saying I want more anamorphic, and then this gives us more anamorphic, and now I'm saying that this is where I don't want more anamorphic. So, you know, maybe I'm just being a bit picky here. So let's get into the real important stuff when it comes to this lens. What separates it from all the other anamorphic lenses we've seen in recent years, and it is AF. Here, I screen recorded the output from the Burano and just kind of tested it, and it works just like any other AF lens. Probably works closer to a Sigma one than it does a native Sony one, but I'm someone who's never really noticed a difference. I know there's a difference in photos, it does less bursts and stuff from non-Sony lenses, but for me here, this is A+. This is as good as AF gets. I don't know what people would really want other than this. I have some more examples in different scenarios. This one's on the FX3, so just because I feel like throwing some different cameras in there to test it with. And again, it's on a motorized slider. It's going back and forth, and it's working great. It's locked on my eye. It's not really changing much at all. This is the actual footage recorded by the FX3. See, looks really good. Minimum focus breathing, so it's not majorly distracting. I think it's really pleasant. That little pull was onto the camera there. It's more the camera than the lens. But yeah, I don't think it's distracting at all. I think it works great. I'm really happy with the performance. So this is a good AF example as it's dark and the camera's going to struggle a little bit more to tell the lens where my eyes are and face. And we also get to see minimum focus distance good in here as well. So this again is the Burano, I believe. If you see just in a sec, I'm right at minimum focus now. If I come any closer, I will lose focus. But you can see it's tracking me really well. No issues. and here I'm too close, so minimum focus, and then you'll see slowly back away, and right there, that is the minimum focus of this lens. So this is kind of the highest magnification ratio you get, which is quite pleasant and nice, very portrait style, and I think it's great. And take in mind, anamorphic lenses tend to have worse minimum focus distances than normal spherical lenses anyway. Here, I want to show you me tapping, just to show you the response of the lens. And yeah, as I mentioned, for me, this is not much different to when my Sony and Sigma lenses do the same thing. Focus breathing here, you can see it's a little bit, but for an anamorphic lens, it's what I'd expect. Actually, it's quite cinematic. There's definitely better focus breathing anamorphic lenses with less, but you know, the fact that this has AF built in and costs us not that much money, I think that's really acceptable and nice. A great lens is what you need to capture incredible images, but that is all pointless without knowing how to use it. That's why I've spent the last year creating Cine Guides. That is a step-by-step roadmap into actually becoming a true professional in the world of video production. When I first started out, I had no mentor and no plan. I was using trial and error to just guess where I needed to go next, but I now realize there is a much better way of doing things, and I've put all this information inside of Cine Guides. There is exposure, framing, cinematic lighting, editing and post-production, color grading, even to the business side of video production. Everything you could need. You can get lifetime access plus extra bonuses and a discount if you get in on the early entry. Link will be in the top of the description below. Stop wasting your time and fast track your career in video. So let's talk about using this lens on some projects. When I first got the lens in for review, it worked on my FX3 but did not work on the Burano. I contacted Sirui and let them know, and shortly after I received the firmware, I did it to the lens. It's got that little genius USB-C port on the back, which is, let me just tell you, to update the firmware was incredibly easy. They emailed me a file, I plugged it into my MacBook via USB-C, I dragged the file on to the lens, I didn't even install it, and it just worked. That was it. It would then take it to the Burano, and we was away. It then worked on the Burano, which was fantastic. But there was a couple of little awkwardnesses on both of the cameras. I don't think this is any fault of Sirui's though. I think it's more on the side of Sony, as this lens is kind of the first of its kind. And when these cameras was built and created, this lens did not exist, or even maybe the idea was not in Sony's mind. Because when you go and de-squeeze your footage in camera, so it will not record the de-squeeze into the footage, but just so you're displaying the correct footage, not seeing it all distorted on your screen, this will disable AF. So both on the Burano and on the FX3, if you go into the settings and select de-squeeze 1.33 times, AF then turns off. Don't know why this is. Maybe it required more work from Sony to do a bit more coding, remap the pixel size so that it kind of knew where the edges of the frame were. I'm not 100% sure, but Sony chose not to do it as they didn't know that this was going to be a future, I'm guessing. Hopefully, now this is a thing, Sony will pay attention, and in future cameras, we will head in the right direction. But for now, this means that to see your de-squeeze footage and use AF, you will need an external monitor, which is fine and works great. You just send out the normal kind of weird distorted looking footage to the external monitor and then de-squeeze it inside your monitor, and AF works perfectly fine. I really do like the balance of this lens on the FX3 and any other mirrorless camera for that matter. It's a little bit front heavy, but it's pretty close to like perfect balance. That 615 grams of weight is right where you want to be. Like a 24-70 is just 100 or so grams more than that. And then, you know, it feels a bit front heavy, but it's kind of like your offhand catches that weight and it feels quite nice. So going back to the question at the beginning of the video, does this fall more on the side of a cinema lens or a photography lens? Fortunately for us video people, it probably falls more onto the latter. Just because when you go into manual focus, it's such a numb feeling when twisting. Even though it's geared and you could put a focus motor on there, it is quite numb. You can tell it's electronical, focus by wire style, where it's just when you're twisting it, it's sending that signal to turn the electronic motor inside, rather than if you was on a cinema lens, You actually feel the mechanics. You feel like you're pulling the glass. It feels repeatable. It just feels like it's much easier to make the lens do what your hand wants it to do. With that being said, cinema lenses don't have a little switch on them that you flick and you suddenly have AF. That is the whole point in this lens coming into existence. When using this lens on the Sony Burano, sometimes I take a step back and I just kind of take in exactly what I am doing. Like internal RAW, 8.6K, full frame, AF, IBIS, variable ND, picking my exposure. Like, it is quite incredible how far we have come in terms of what is possible in a handheld camera. It is kind of video for dummies in a way. Yeah, you lose a bit of fun taking out of like choosing exposure, but you can always just turn everything into manual and do that anyway. Just the ability to be in a run and gun scenario, being able to use that variable ND with the IBIS, with the AF, and its anamorphic, and its internal RAW, you know, just everything stacks up. Before you know it, like, you're getting these incredibly easy yet detailed cinematic images. When I was on the farm, it really run home to me that I was filming these chickens, and obviously you can't make the chickens do anything. They're just kind of running in every direction they want, and it's just a nightmare scenario and if you wanted to do that with an anamorphic lens, until now, you would require manual focus, and I would say that I was getting probably 5 to 10 times more usable footage than if I was pulling manually. I'm not saying I wouldn't have got some footage manually, I'm just saying with the AF system inside the lens, I was getting 5 to 10 times more footage in a shorter period of time. Now, you can't argue with me that that does not lead to a better story and a better video and an overall better product. It's not as sharp as a G Master lens, it's not as cinematic as some of these newer cinema lens kits, which we're seeing what incredible value. But none of those lenses offer what this lens right here does. This is a truly unique proposition, and it is amazing. It's just another tool to tell better stories, shoot anamorphic wide open at t1.8, and be able to get lots and lots of usable footage without worrying about if it's going to be in or out of focus. I personally think that we need to be really thankful for companies like Sirui. They do new designs, new ideas, new concepts. There's Sirui and a couple of these style of companies, you know they are. Because dare I say, the mainstream manufacturers have got borderline boring. Their innovation is lacking, and that's coming from someone like me who lives and breathes filmmaking equipment and technology. This lens, I believe, is priced really well for what it offers. It's super unique, its build quality is great. I personally can't wait for the rest of the range to come out, and this kind of continuation of the combination of photography and cinema glass merging in the middle gets better and better. But until that time, if you want to know what my favourite anamorphic lens is, watch this video here.